Before we finish the topic of Kas and Kapdanas, which we call anger and taking offense, and oftentimes when it comes to anger, people say, "Do you get angry?" I get angry sometimes. Do you get bothered? Maybe a little bit more than I get angry, right? Do things get in our way? Okay, maybe more than that. So we have different definitions of what we call anger, but they all fall into the same category. So Kapdanas, which is a concept of being makvid, means that you're bothered, you care about things more than you actually should about what other people do, and that is from the category of anger. So as we mentioned yesterday, we were talking about these concepts during Siras HaOmer to remind us that one of the key things we need to do is actually work on ourselves. I told one of my students that there's a concept that on Pesach we offer the Korban HaOmer, which the Mefarshim explained that on Pesach we're offering this korban, which is a barley-based offering. So the Mefarshim explain a barley-based offering is an animal food type of offering. And on Shavuos we offer what's known as the Shtei HaLechem. The Shtei HaLechem, the two loaves, that is a wheat-based offering as opposed to barley, which represents a higher level of food for mankind. Which means from the time Pesach comes until Shavuos comes, we are considered what we call raw material, a lower level. We have to work on ourselves so we get to Shavuos, so we can be zochah, so we can merit to be able to receive the Torah, which is why we have Shtei HaLechem on Shavuos. So there is a learning curve that we all have to make every year during these days of Sirat Omer, and that's why we're learning about this concept of Kas and Kpeda, just trying to up our game a little bit more. So that's what we mentioned. Somebody asked me if I can mention a story that I was mentioning before. So this is totally off topic, but maybe it's somewhat relevant. Today we had a meeting, a number of rabbis in the community. We had a meeting with the CSS, the Community Security Service, which is an organization that probably originated in Israel. I'm guessing they were trained by the Mussar, who knows who. But basically, it's an initiative that's throughout the United States and I think other areas of Europe where they train the average individual in shuls to be able to protect their shuls, to be able to protect their houses of worship. And it's a Jewish-based organization that trains people to be on the lookout, to be able to be aware of what's happening. And it really stemmed from the fact that just hiring security guards weren't going to cut it. It's not enough, and people need to really be aware, and it has to come from inside. So he told us of a story, and the story that he told us that in 2008, there was an almost, I think, did I say 2008, 2005? 2005. I think it was 2005, that from 1997 to 2005, there was, I guess, this guy, this indoctrinated Muslim who was in prison, and he was able to convert many people in prison to follow his path. He basically planned an attack which took 7 years for them to plan, to destroy and to murder people in Young Israel Century City on Pico Boulevard. And the plan was at the time that at the beginning Young Israel Century City had windows right in front that went right into the shul. So they were going to do a car ramming attack with a van, come out and just take everyone out, and people would come around the corner. Anyone running, they would just blow up or shoot and whatever. So there was a plan in 2005 that was thwarted in the 11th hour. And what happened was at the time that they had guns, and what he was showing was that it takes them months to plan, and when they do it, they take copious notes about everything that happens. Everything that happens, they see who's around when, who's around where. As he pointed out, it's not really for this, but he said in the Charlie Hebdo massacre that happened a few years ago in France, so they knew the exact time that the secretary took a smoking break, which was a 10-minute break. They were able to take her, make her punch in the code, and they were able to take out all the people, knowing that it was fully guarded, because the year before, that newspaper, the year before, they were already attacked inside. They had moved to a new building, put up all the best security, and they still got attacked 1 year later with all the best security, right? So what he pointed out in this case over here, again, Israel Century City, was that they were planning this attack. They would go in, they would look around, they had people parking a van across the street, taking notes, looking who was coming in, who was going out, for a number of years of what they were doing, and they needed money. The problem was that they needed money. They had some guns, but they didn't have enough ammunition. They needed money, and so they were robbing a lot of convenience stores in the area, going from convenience stores. So there was a number of months where convenience stores were being robbed. And at that time, so some of the convenience store personnel decided they were going to take matters into their own hands. So one guy had a bat. So he brought a bat to the store, and when these guys came to go and attack, he picked up his bat and they ran. For some reason, because their guns had no ammunition in them. they're just coming with empty guns, and they started running, and one guy dropped his cell phone. They found the cell phone. The cell phone wasn't like our classic cell phones today. It was the old cell phones that had, no smartphones and the like. It had some data on it, some phone numbers, whatever. They were able to trace. They traced it back to one of the people's apartments. They opened up the apartment, Osama bin Laden all over the walls in these places, and they thought they were just getting after the guy. And the cops at the time just felt like, okay, we got what we needed. But one cop said, no, there's got to be something more going on over here, because they didn't put the two together. They didn't know anything about what's happening in Israel Century City. They didn't put the two together. And one cop said, there's got to be more. And they found boxes and boxes of notepads with notes of what they were planning on doing. And that led them to this, that they were planning an attack in a fairly soon time. And they were able to arrest that entire string to prevent the attack that could have been deadly and devastating in Israel Century City. So he said, these are things nobody knows about. People don't know about these things that actually happens, which just helps us remember the chesed of Hashem that He does for us, that the amount of times we're protected is unbelievable. So the story has no relevance. The only connection I can tell you in the story was, those Muslims were really angry. Okay? And so we go back to anger over here. Okay? So, these guys are really angry. Okay? That is the basic connection I can give you. The store owners are really angry.
The store owners getting robbed.
The store owners getting robbed is what saved the Jewish people's lives. That's right. Instead of being nice. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So anyway, the line we were up to yesterday was that one should always strive to be humble like Hillel. And not a kaptan. Don't be stern and unyielding like Shammai. That's what we said yesterday. Okay, so we know some of these stories. Just to quote a couple of other ideas that we have on this. Again, a kaptan is someone who's impatient. And when you're impatient, that's just a level of anger that comes out in a different way. And we know it. Someone said to me, I noticed when I do this, like you give me this look. I'm like, I didn't know I was giving you this look. But sometimes that means that we have a certain element of impatience for us as well. So Rav Ada bar Avos, his students once asked him, how come you were zocheh to a long life? Why did you have a long life? And he said, because all my life I never showed signs of anger in my house. And that's obviously a key thing for us to be able to do, certainly in our home. So he says in the quote over here, the commentaries explain, all the more so not outside of our home. Which means it's easier to be angry at home, because no one's looking at us. So if I get angry at home, outside I can smile, I can nod, I can be everything perfect to everybody else. But in the home, nobody has to know what I'm like. So he says, in my home I wasn't angry, so all the more so outside I wasn't angry as well. This trait of kapdanas, of being extracting and exacting and yielding to people, is a very difficult midah that we know. And we know that Moshe Rabbeinu sinned because of this. When it came to Aharon, that he sinned, he was upset the way Aaron handled the korban on that day, and that caused Moshe Rabbeinu to sin. We know that when a person is makvid, when they are unyielding, eventually it comes to a point where they don't have the opportunity to think appropriately, and Moshe lost his divine inspiration in that scenario as well. So we learn from that a person who has that loses his wisdom as well. We also know that a person should be moderate in his words. That's what he says, that a person should be careful with the mamtin bidvar. Be careful of the words that come out of your mouth. You should be positive before speaking. You should not be unyielding about your words, because those that don't give in, they're going to be able to forget their words. So we find this by Moshe Rabbeinu, and this is something that we obviously need to work on. It's something that's clear for us, that on a daily basis, there are times when just even holding our tongue, as we saw that story yesterday, when we want to get angry and we can hold back even for a day, that's pretty amazing. Hold back maybe for an hour, okay, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. If you can hold back, you'll see that there'll be some level of improvement that we don't have to give in right away. I just want to share this story because it's a nice story. I'm not really sure the relevance of this story, but I'm going to share it to you because it's in the same chapter. So tonight is the night of irrelevant stories that are important for a person to have. Okay, so the story, and I think that the essence of the story is really just simply about a person being, easygoing about what happens in situations, and in general, the story happened to be a story related to anger. Otherwise, I'm not really sure why they quote the story, but the following quote from a story in Tiferes Banim of the famed Rabbi Yeshua Leib Diskin of Brisk. So he wrote a letter. Rabbi Yeshua Leib Diskin wrote a letter to Rav Chaim Nachum, who was the chief rabbi of Egypt at the time, and he wanted the chief rabbi to clarify a point that he had made about a particular case. So he didn't receive a response. So he wrote a second letter. Sometime later, he received a letter, followed by another letter, an apology letter that came after, because the Rav was not able to respond in time. So he said, what was the reason why? So he said, I was occupied in the palace of the king at the time in Egypt. So the Mariel Diskin at the time, Rav Shuvah Diskin, was concerned that perhaps there was some technical decree against the Jewish people, and maybe he needed extra help, but maybe something is happening in Egypt that's going to be against the Jewish people. So he sent them a letter that was expressed, and he said, tell me what's going on, what's the situation? So he says, I'll tell you, here's the story. The story is, the king and queen were walking in the palace gardens near a stream. An argument broke out because the queen wanted to drink from the stream. And the king said, you're forbidden, don't do it. It's a terrible thing for you to do, to drink from the stream. And so she said, but I want to drink. So he commanded her, he said to her 3 times, you cannot drink from the stream. And she went and she drank anyway. Okay, so what do you do to a queen who doesn't listen to the king? Off with your head, right? So now, the words of this incident reached the king's palace, the government officials, and they became enraged because the king didn't do anything to his wife. You need to do something to her. You have to, you're obeying royal law, and you're considered a rebel. You have to punish her. And the official said to the king, if you don't punish her, then we are going to rebel against you, because you are going against the law itself. You're going against the royal law, we'll revolt against you, and we'll kill you if you don't actually punish the queen. Caught in a tough space, yeah? And so in the end, they resolved the following. They said, we're going to give the king 3 months to figure out the issue, and justify why his wife should not be killed, and should not be judged as a rebel. Okay? So the king didn't know what to do, so he chose 3 wise men. Who are the 3 wise men?
Larry Mullen,
Curly Joe, or the usual. A rabbi, a priest, and an imam. Right? It's a joke, right? That's what happened in this case over here. It's a real story, right? So they actually chose the chief rabbi of Egypt, who was this Rav Chaim Nachum. And then they chose a Christian Christian priest and an Islamic imam. And they put him in a house to discuss the matter, to come up with a solution for the king. So they didn't know what to do. So the Rav of Egypt sent this letter over to the Mariel Diskin, and he said, I found a way. The Mariel Diskin said, I found a way that I can help the king get off the hook and absolve the queen from her issues. So he quoted a certain saying in Chazal. We don't know what it was. He quoted a saying in Chazal. And he sent this over to this chief rabbi. The chief rabbi brought the solution to the king, presented his ministers. Everybody's free to go. The queen is fine. The king is fine. Everybody's free to go. So they learned that. So the king found out that where did the head rabbi of Egypt get this information from? He said, I got it from the Mariel Diskin and Brisk. So he wrote him a thanks. He wrote a thank you letter, and he sent him a gold coin. The Mariel Diskin took the gold coin, put it in a drawer, never to see again. After he dies, the family finds his gold coin, doesn't know what the story is. There's a thank you letter of this medallion. The Rav of Egypt then came by to tell him what actually happened, what transpired. But he did not remember what Chazal was told. He had no idea what it was that the Mariel Diskin told over to the king. So what's the relevance of the story over here? So then, Rav Chaim Kanievsky heard the story, and he said, I think I know what the proof was that he gave. Okay, you go to the Gadol Ador and he comes up with the proof. So Chaim Kanievsky said, what chazal could this be? So he said, it's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah with the following question: if a person bows down to a stream of water, can you use the water from that stream as libations for Mizbeach? Person used the watering stream as an idol. Can I now use the waters to use on my own kosher altar? Am I allowed to use it at all for the holiday of Sukkot? So Gemara says, if the person intended to worship the water itself, we can assume that he bowed only to the water that was present at the moment that he bowed down to. So therefore he bows down, and then the water flows downstream. So any new water is not subject to that prohibition. So the water in front of us is not prohibited. So he said, so this is what the Mariel must have said over to the queen. He told you not to drink, but the waters that he said not to drink from were already gone. So I didn't drink from that water. I drank from another bit of water from the stream, and that's how he says that the king was able to get himself and his wife off the hook, and not the water that the king drank from, and therefore everyone lived happily ever after in that story over there. It says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, that must have been the Gemara's case that the Mariel Diskin used for that proof. Okay, I'm not sure why it relates to anger. I'm not sure exactly why it relates to taking offense. But again, we had people, but it's still a great story for us to share.